Hello and welcome. I'm Micah, the cosplayer seamstress. Today we are going to be finishing the dress of the Miss Frizzle costume. But before that, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The materials I will need for this are the bodice from last week, the fabric, interfacing, zipper, buttons, transfer paper, the patterns with instructions, thread, scissors, both paper and fabric, a handheld needle, and the sewing machine. If you would like to know where I got the fabric, interfacing, zipper, buttons, transfer paper, and the patterns, and how much they cost, check out my patterns and plans video. The first step of the project is to cut the pattern paper. To figure out which pieces I will need, I will reference the pattern. I will need pieces 5 and 6. I will also be using a collar from a different pattern. The piece that I will need from that is 11. These are the pieces for the skirt and collar. Once I have determined which pattern pieces I need, I cut them out of the paper with the paper scissors. Remember to never use fabric scissors on paper. Once I cut the pattern paper out, I will then make the skirt piece the right size for the costume. I did not need a full-length skirt. To do this, I had my partner help me measure the length that I wanted on me, and I did this off camera. Then I measured the skirt pieces and added about 2 inches to the length for safety later and the hem. Then I cut the pattern pieces to size. After I cut the pattern paper, I will use those pieces to cut out the fabric. You can use the cutting layouts provided in the patterns, or you can make your own layout as long as you follow the instructions on the pattern paper. For example, if you need to cut something on a fold, you need to cut that on a fold, or if you need to cut 2, make sure you cut 2. This is if you are following the pattern exactly. I only cut 1 on a piece that said to cut 2 for 2 reasons. 1, I did not need as full of a skirt as the pattern was going to make, and 2, I ran out of fabric. I will be creating my own layout as I will need to cut extra fabric in the green. The green fabric I will be using here will be for the collar, so I will cut that out of the green. I will also cut out the interfacing, remembering to cut on the iron-on side. I will also need to remember to put on dots and cut notches here as well. I mark my dots with fabric chalk later. Next, I will set up the machine. If you are not sure how to make a bobbin match your thread or how to thread the machine or bobbin, check out the sewing machine walkthrough video. I will be using mainly purple thread on this part so that it matches the fabric. I will change it to green thread when I need to. Try to always match your thread to the fabric unless you are wanting the thread to stand out or if it will not be seen. Now I will begin following the instructions. Please know that I will not always follow the directions, and that is okay. Step 8 is to reinforce the front part of the skirt. I will stitch about 1 inch on either side of the dot and then clip close to that. Step 9 is about sewing the front and back pieces of the skirt together. I will then press all of the seams open. Then I will be setting up the skirt to be gathered by sewing the ease stitches. 1 at the seam allowance and then another 1/4 inch away from that. This will make it easier to sew the skirt to the bodice. After that, I will press up the hem and then sewing it in place, which is step 10. Next, I will do step 11. With right sides together, I will pin the bodice and the skirt together, matching all of the dots and pulling on the ease stitches to make it all fit. I will then hand baste this in place so that the fabric does not pull or move when putting in the true stitches. Then I will sew this at the seam allowance. After that, I will press the seam toward the bodice. I will then start the collar, which is from a different pattern. As such, I will not really be following either of the pattern's instructions. First, I will apply the interfacing. To do this, I will pin the interfacing to the fabric and press the edges. Then I will place a damp cloth on top and press in 10-second increments, moving across the fabric. After that, I will fold up the bottom edges and press that and trim it down to 1/4 inch. I'll then sew the facing to the collar, leaving the folded edge unsewn. Also, I will be trimming the seams so that it's not bulky later. After that, I will turn the collar to the right side out. Then I will trim the edge of the bodice to the slip stitching I did in the last video. After that, I will pin the collar pieces to the dress with the right sides together. Then I will sew them together with the machine. Then clip the seams and press the seam towards the collar, turning the collar down and over that rough edge. After that, I will slip stitch this in place by hand. Slip stitches were meant to make it appear as though no sewing took place. Now I will do the zipper, which is step 12 on the original pattern. First, I pressed 5/8 inch, creating a nice fine edge. Then, I pinned the zipper in place. After that, I hand basted this in place so that it wouldn't slip or pull when I went to the machine. Finally, I stitched this in place on the machine. Next, I'll be adding the buttons. I will be sewing them on the panel that I added to the front of the bodice last week. If you would like to see how I made the bodice, check out the Miss Frizzle Part 2 Bodice and Sleeves on my channel. I will be sewing the buttons on by hand. After that, I will be tacking the panel down so that it stays in place. Next, I'll be making the bats. The bats are a silhouette that my partner designed on Affinity Photo. I took the transfer paper and printed the designs on the paper, making sure to print it on the correct side. Then I cut the paper to size using the scissors. After that, I followed the directions on the package. To do this, I took a piece of wood to protect my table and then flipped the paper so the white part was up and pressed this for 90 seconds while constantly moving. One thing to keep in mind if using transfer paper on both sides of a piece is to put something between the fabric, like wood, so you do not melt what you've already done. After about 2 minutes, I peeled the paper off and had lovely bats. Congratulations, you now have a completed dress. Here is what the dress looks like on me, and I am so excited to wear it for Halloween. If you would like to see how I make the black cloak and the jewelry and the shoes, check out my video next week.
Now that you have the dress, you are ready to make the jewelry and the shoes. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you on the next project!